Joining me now is a friend of the program who's going to give us an update on his cultural assessment of some of the things that really don't get enough proper attention in the corporate media discourse. We have with us writer Chris Bray. How you doing, sir?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing well. I wanted to kind of get your take on a few of the different posts that you've, kind of bringing your ideas into the radio land. You have this piece about how the public health burns, and I wanted you to just kind of give me your kind of paint the picture for us as you can for radio here.
Yeah, so there's a writer named Celeste Ng, and if you want to look that up, it's spelled Ng, her last name. She's a novelist. She went to Harvard. She lives in Cambridge. Her husband is an administrator at Harvard, and because her husband is an administrator at Harvard, she gets or she sees the emails he gets. And Harvard has for students a vaccine mandate that you have to be, quote, up to date on vaccines, COVID vaccines, including the bivalent booster. So if anybody is walking around Harvard, they have like 5 doses of vaccine in them in a year and a half. So Charlotte Ng says that her husband got an email, or says that the Harvard community got an email that says that Harvard has decided COVID's not going away. It's endemic. We're always going to have to deal with it. People are always going to be getting COVID. So we're ending all collective measures to protect against COVID and transitioning to a personal responsibility model. So we're not going to do contact tracing. We're not going to have a mask mandate. You do what you feel you need to do to protect yourself against COVID. But we as an institution aren't going to have COVID measures anymore, except the vaccine mandate.
Wow, it's like they realized they were still in America for once. Wow.
Very briefly, I'm sure they'll overcome that soon. And there's a lot of that going around. Like, I live in Los Angeles County, where our public health director, Barbara Ferrer, is out of her mind and is saying that she wants to implement a mask mandate again. And people are just saying no, like it's all over with. But Charlotte Ng just imploded, just went on this long rant, 20-tweet thread on Twitter about how we're abandoning our shared responsibility and we're giving up on the model of standing together, and we're transitioning to this, disgusting libertarian individualistic approach. And, we're no longer going to stand together and protect each other and fight together. And she says, if you reject COVID measures of shared protection and things like mask mandates, then what you're saying is you want to kind of live in a society where you don't even have sewers anymore, and everybody just deposits their sewers on the street. I had to think about a polite way to say that on the radio. And you can all just take individual protective measures and wear boots and gloves to walk in all the sewage on the streets, because we're not going to have a shared disposal of sewage anymore. And it's just completely insane. Like, if we don't have mask mandates, then we live in Somalia and it's just all anarchy and chaos and we're all going to die. So she's horrified by the fact that we're not going to have collectivism anymore. And if you read through this whole thread, that's all about her feelings about the decline of collectivism as a public health response. The one thing she never says is she never talks about how many of the measures she's deploring the loss of work. Like, she never talks about any of it as public health measures that work. It's a whole thing about her feelings about losing collectivism.
That sounds a lot like religion. I mean, that's kind of my premise to the whole concept of collectivism, so that sounds right on the money, as I'd expect,
It's religion, yes. And I had something brilliant to say about that, and it slips out of my head. I was thinking about there's a journalist in the UK named Laura Dodsworth, who the British government had a series of advisory panels. Like, they hired a bunch of sociologists and social psychologists and experts in public health messaging, and said, how can we convince people to comply with all of our COVID measures? And this journalist, Laura Dodsworth, she wrote a book called A State of Fear. And she talked about the way that the team of experts in the UK told the British government that they should work on inculcating a state of fear, on teaching people fearfulness. And one of the things they said was, if you make everyone wear a mask, every time people step out of the house, they'll be surrounded by reminders to live in a state of fear. You'll obliterate people's faces. You'll have a signal that's in the place we all look at each other, that will constantly be beating this message of fearfulness into people's brains. And so there's this cycle of reminders that happens, that you're afraid because you see everybody in masks, so everybody's in masks because you feel afraid.
Uh-huh.
And we've reached this point now where I think people are just debilitated by it. It has become a kind of faith that there's a percentage of the population, and we have somebody like Matthias de Smet who says it's something like 30% of the population who've descended into a kind of mass formation psychosis. A group of people who just can't let it go. People can't let go of the masks, not because they know they work, not because they know they're protective in terms of the virus, but because of the way it makes them feel, because not having their face shrouded, not seeing other people with their faces shrouded, gives them anxiety. So, I mean, if you can find this on Twitter, everybody who hasn't read it, I've summarized a very long rant, Celeste Ng, NG. It opens with a description of her seeing this message from Harvard that says, we're not doing COVID mitigation measures anymore. And it's really an extraordinary look into the kind of emotional meltdown that happens among people who have internalized all of these fear-based measures, all of this fearfulness, and all of this social embrace of the idea that we should all be afraid and other people are a threat to us and a risk to us. When you see other people walking around on the street, you should regard them as carriers of disease and be very scared of other people.